The wind-whipped plains of Nebraska in the winter of 1958 were a desolate, unforgiving landscape. But they were about to become the backdrop for a crime spree that would forever change the American psyche. Before the names Manson, Bundy, or Gacy became synonymous with terror, there was Charles Starkweather, a slight, 19-year-old high school dropout with a James Dean swagger and a deep-seated rage. He was a nobody who desperately wanted to be a somebody, and in the span of just 9 days, he would achieve a twisted immortal fame, dragging his 14-year-old girlfriend, Caril Fugate, into a nightmare that left 11 people dead and a nation gripped by a fear it had never known. This is the story of the calendar of crime's most chilling week, a rampage of senseless violence that marked the true beginning of the modern serial killer era. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Charles Raymond Starkweather was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, in 1938, the third of 7 children. His early life was marked by a sense of inadequacy and a deep resentment towards a world he felt had constantly slighted him. He was born with a slight speech impediment and a bow-legged gait, which made him a target for bullies. He struggled in school, eventually dropping out, and found work as a garbage collector. It was a job he hated, a constant reminder of his low social standing. His only solace was a growing obsession with the rebellious image of James Dean, adopting the slicked-back hair, the denim jacket, and the defiant sneer. He believed that if he couldn't earn respect, he would command fear. This simmering volcano of frustration found its focus in a young girl named Caril Fugate. Caril was just 13 when she met Charles, a petite dark-haired girl who seemed drawn to his dangerous, older persona. For Charles, Caril was the one person who looked up to him, who validated his self-image as a tough, misunderstood rebel. He saw her as his loyal sidekick, his Bonnie to his Clyde, a partner in the grand violent drama he was composing in his mind. But the relationship was volatile, fueled by Charles's possessiveness and explosive temper. Caril's family, particularly her mother, Velda Bartlett, disapproved of the relationship, seeing Charles for the volatile dead-end figure he was. This disapproval was the final spark that ignited Charles's rage into a murderous flame. The first victim, however, came earlier, on December 1, 1957. Charles, needing money and perhaps testing the limits of his own depravity, walked into a filling station in Lincoln and attempted to rob the attendant, 21-year-old Robert Calvert. When Calvert refused to hand over the money, Charles shot him 4 times with a shotgun. He took a few dollars and some cigarettes, but the true prize was the realization that he could take a life and walk away. He had crossed a line, and the world had not stopped. The murder was initially ruled a robbery gone wrong, and Charles, for a time, was not a suspect. He had tasted blood, and the hunger for violence would not be sated. The true spree began on January 21, 1958. Charles drove to Caril's home, where he got into a furious argument with her mother, Velda, and her stepfather, Marion Bartlett, over his relationship with Caril. In a fit of uncontrolled fury, Charles shot and killed both Velda and Marion. But the violence did not stop there. Caril's 2.5-year-old half-sister, Betty Zhang, was also present. In a horrific act of cold-blooded cruelty, Charles bludgeoned the toddler to death. The 3 bodies were hidden in an outbuilding behind the house. For the next 6 days, Charles and Caril remained in the house, telling anyone who came by, including Caril's grandmother, that the family was sick with the flu. They even posted a note on the door: "Stay home. Everybody is sick with the flu." The deception was chillingly effective, but the smell of death would eventually betray them. When Caril's grandmother finally grew suspicious and called the police, Charles and Caril were long gone. They had fled in Charles's car, leaving the gruesome scene behind. The discovery of the bodies on January 27 sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Lincoln. The killers were now on the run, and the nation was beginning to pay attention. Their next stop was a secluded farm near Bennett, Nebraska, belonging to 70-year-old August Meyer. Charles, needing a new car and supplies, forced his way into the home. He shot Meyer with a shotgun, and then killed the family's dog before stealing their car and a cache of food and weapons. The spree was escalating, the victims now chosen at random, their lives extinguished for the most trivial of reasons. Later that same day, the couple's stolen car became stuck in the mud, They abandoned it and began walking down a country road, where they encountered two teenagers, 17-year-old Robert Jensen and his 16-year-old girlfriend, Caril King, who were driving home from a date. Charles, armed and desperate, forced the couple to drive them to an abandoned storm cellar. There, in a scene of unimaginable terror, he shot Jensen and then sexually assaulted and shot King. The brutality of the crime was a terrifying leap from the domestic violence of the Bartlett murders. The killers were no longer just running. They were hunting. The manhunt was now in full swing, with law enforcement agencies across Nebraska and surrounding states on high alert. The media had dubbed them the Mad Dog Killer and his teenage mall, and the public was in a state of panic. On January 28th, Charles and Caril arrived in the wealthy neighborhood of Lincoln, seeking a place to hide, and another vehicle. They chose the home of C. Lauer Ward, a prominent industrialist. Charles forced his way in, killing Ward, his wife Clara, and their maid, Lillian Finkel. The Ward family was murdered in their own home, a symbol of safety and security, which only amplified the public's terror. The killers stole the Ward's black Packard, a luxury car that would make them stand out. But Charles seemed to relish the attention, the notoriety. The final leg of the spree took them across the state line into Wyoming. On January 29th, near Douglas, Wyoming, they encountered Merle Collison, a 37-year-old traveling shoe salesman from Great Falls, Montana, who was sleeping in his car by the side of the road. Charles, needing a less conspicuous vehicle, woke Collison and shot him. This final senseless murder was the one that led to their downfall. A passing motorist, Dr. Turner, noticed the black Packard and the body of Collison. When Charles and Caril sped away, Dr. Turner gave chase, eventually catching up to them. The ensuing high-speed chase involved multiple law enforcement vehicles. During the chase, Charles, in a moment of panic, threw his rifle out the window. He later claimed he did this because he was out of ammunition, but the act of discarding his weapon was a sign that his reign of terror was over. The chase ended when a deputy shot out the Packard's rear window, and Charles, fearing he had been hit, pulled over and surrendered. Caril and Fugate was found huddled in the car, claiming she was a hostage. The 9-day rampage had ended, leaving 11 people dead. The trials that followed captivated the nation. Charles Starkweather was tried first for the murder of Robert Jensen. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Throughout the trial, he remained defiant, at times even boastful about his crimes. He claimed he was a victim of society, a product of a world that had rejected him. He even tried to recant his confession, but the evidence was overwhelming. Caril and Fugate's trial was far more complex. She maintained that Charles had held her captive, threatening to kill her family if she tried to escape. The prosecution argued she was a willing accomplice, a cold-blooded participant in the murders. The jury ultimately found her guilty and sentenced her to life in prison. On June 25, 1959, Charles Starkweather was executed by electric chair in the Nebraska State Penitentiary. His final words were reportedly a mumbled, "I got nothing to say." He was 20 years old. Caril and Fugate was paroled in 1976 after serving 18 years and has maintained her innocence ever since. The Starkweather-Fugate case was a watershed moment in American crime history. It was one of the first major crime sprees to be covered extensively by television and national media, creating a new kind of celebrity criminal. It inspired a generation of artists, most notably the film Badlands and Bruce Springsteen's album Nebraska, cementing Charles Starkweather's dark legacy as a symbol of nihilistic, random violence. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.